The political climate in America for a long time, especially post 9/11, had always been or had been somewhat anti-Islam.
And we were trying to invite Republicans and Democrats to be sitting in the same room for this exercise. So the foremost challenge we had was to have members of Congress commit to attend and then also commit to listen to this event. We were so worried about this.
The organisers' worries are not unfounded. During the 2008 US tour, the local community could not convince politicians to attend a special reception and remain for Huzur's speech.
The stature of Khalifatul Masih globally was something that we were just struggling to introduce to these leaders.
There was a senator who came to visit, but he expressed as if he was in a great rush and he couldn't stay for very long.
And he came and was rather terse in his engagement, and I think at one point asked what Huzur wanted from him, as if this was a political transaction.
The Jamaat there presented him with some literature of the Jamaat. He was very reluctant and he said, no, I think I'd rather say no, I'll have to decline.
He certainly didn't want to have any external footprint. He didn't want to make any external remarks, and I think he was visibly unsettled by the ask, and he was almost doing it begrudgingly. And I think the body language was one of him being extremely rushed and wanting to get out. Even before he got in, he was thinking of his way out, his exit.
But things have moved on since 2008, and now there is an opportunity to address far more than the single politician who left all those years ago. On seeing the community's progress, the hateful clerics of Pakistan are consumed with jealousy.
Whisperings and external public admonitions by religious leaders and political leaders in Pakistan saying, look what's happening over there. It's very clear indication, it's shameless pandering by the leader of Jamaat Ahmadiyya in this way to hurt and undermine Pakistan.
As the Khalifa prepares for his US tour, an invitation is received from the highest official levels.
People who were working with the president had given us the green light that we can extend this invitation, a private meeting with the president. We shared this information to Huzur, and Huzur very clearly told us and informed us that it was not important for him to meet the President of the United States on this trip, and in fact, it would be counterproductive for him to meet the leadership because it would be projected in Pakistan that somehow he was meeting with President Barack Obama or Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, both of whom were under tremendous political opposition in Pakistan, and that this could create a situation. I conveyed this to the White House, that the meeting cannot take place because of this sensitivity, and we received a very surprised response from the White House that a meeting of this stature would be declined, and when they learned of the reason that Huzur provided for him not to proceed, they commented, and particularly the director of the faith-based office, that he was so impressed, and he said he had never encountered a situation where any leader would decline a meeting and would give this reason for it.
The Khalifa politely declines the meeting, shielding Pakistan's Ahmadis. Yet, having arrived in the US, there is still a chance of his addressing national leaders at Capitol Hill. But with only hours until the speech, the entire event hangs in the balance.
In order to achieve some kind of a security clearance, there is a formal process in Capitol Hill through the Sergeant at Arms, and you have to process that request. We went through that process for many months and were unsuccessful in waiving any of the security measures that we thought we could waive for Huzur. And it ended up where Huzur would actually have to go through the very process that all other leaders would go through. It was actually conveyed to me the Dalai Lama is wanted, so your religious leader will certainly not be subject to any different exception.
The night before the event, I went and had a meeting with the Amur-e-Kharja team in USA, and I vividly recall Amjad Khan telling me, he said that even now, it's only 12 hours till the event, but if you ask me, is it definitely going to take place? I can't say it will be, because tomorrow morning they may say that when Huzur comes, we are going to do security checking, And he said, if they say that to me before Hazur arrives, it's going to be very difficult, and my decision, or in accordance with the Misab, will be to cancel the event.
Even in the hours prior to the event, when we had met with the Sergeant-at-Arms, he informed us that today there would be some security given to Hazur, where he would have to go through some wanding process, perhaps his shoes and also the turban and many other things, and it was just something that was inescapable.
The Khalifa's entourage sets out.
In our car there were some quite senior members of Jamaat, Mani Javed Saab, Private Secretary, Abdul Majid Tahir Sahib, a few others. And it was about a 15-minute drive from Baitur Rahman to the Capitol Hill. And throughout that journey, not a single word was spoken in our car, in our vehicle. And I remember all of us, I could feel the tension. We'd all heard about these things, about the fact that there's going to be a lot of security checking, and we were just praying that nothing, God forbid, happens. And then even if that passes, that the local Jamaat weren't sure if Congress people are going to attend, or if somebody's going to do anything that or say anything which could be inappropriate.
Hazur said that there was a fraction of a second when a thought crossed my mind that how am I going to speak to these people who I'm going to speak to today.
And yet, when Hazur arrived on Capitol Hill, he was greeted by a United States Senator, Senator Casey, and a United States Congressman, Congressman Sherman. And they told us that Hazur would be escorted without any security. This was disclosed to me when Hazur arrived.
I have served in U.S. police departments for about 13 years, and few of them have been with Washington Metropolitan Police Department. You know, as police officers, we are trained to read facial expressions, and especially those of other police officers. And security officials who were on duty, upon seeing Hazur, were in absolute awe and reverence and respect for Hazur, and you could clearly see on their faces. And the same police who were once adamant that there will be absolutely no exceptions to submission of security screening, opened up the security barriers and invited Hazur Anwar, and not just Hazur, but all the Kafla members.
I remember as we were going across from one part of the building to another, I suddenly heard one of the security guards quite aggressively shout out, "Stop," like that. And at that point, it just came to me that they're going to stop either one of us or one of the MDs has done something or gone in a certain place where which is why the security guard is so angry and aggressive. But I looked around and all the MDs were continuing to travel freely, unimpeded. And the person he'd actually stopped was a member of Congress and his staff member. And so that was the way that Allah Ta'ala opened the Congress and made it a home of Ahmadiyya on that particular day.
And there was maybe about 50 or 60 American families who were there with their kids looking at the tour, and all of a sudden saw Hazur, and they immediately took out their camera phones and their regular cameras, and they started taking pictures of Hazur.
Hazur was escorted to the public viewing gallery in the House of Representatives, where they were having a full session of Parliament, or of Congress, should I say. And many of the Congress people were there delivering short speeches or making points, as they would do as their normal order of business. And I was under the impression that they had just asked Hazur to visit just so that he could sample the atmosphere. But then Congressman Brad Sherman was invited to address the House of Representatives.
It's my honor today to welcome to the House of Representatives His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad. He is with us today in the gallery. I'm proud to join with our colleagues Zoe Lofgren and others in introducing a resolution today in honor of His Holiness's visit here to our nation's capital.
And none of this was scripted. None of this was part of the Amur-e Kharja plan that we had. This was all strictly because of the angels who were present in the room and who were guiding Huzur.
The reception in Capitol Hill, it was held in a room called the Gold Room. Many of the people who were organizing the event, when they'd researched similar events or similar religious figures who have come, they said that it's very difficult to get more than between 5 to 8 members of Congress to attend such an event. At a push, you might get 9 or 10. But in this event, with the grace of Allah, well over 30 attended, plus around 120 senior dignitaries or influential personalities from think tanks, from the world of academia.
Persecuted for your beliefs, jailed for your faith, and exiled from your homeland, but you refuse to turn to bitterness or vengeance. Instead, His Holiness has emerged as a leader of wisdom and compassion, a champion of nonviolence among nations and respect among faiths. Thank you for your leadership role, for your being such a visionary, such an inspiration. It is an honor to be in the same room with you. Thank you for bringing us all together to honor you and for the work that you have led us in to build a better future. Thank you, Your Holiness. Thank you, Your Holiness.
We were told that Nancy Pelosi, she had other engagements, so she may only be able to come for a couple of minutes and would not be able to stay for Huzur's address. But then once Huzur started speaking, you could see her physically take great interest in whatever Huzur was saying, and then she stayed throughout the event.
The Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, peace and blessing of Allah be upon him, he instructed all Muslims to always remember that an Arab is not superior to a non-Arab, and nor is a non-Arab superior to an Arab. And he taught that a white person is not superior to a black person, and nor is a black person superior to a white person. Thus, it is clear teaching of Islam that the people of all nationalities and all races are equal. In short, if we desire peace to be established in the world, then we must leave aside our personal and national interests for the greater good, and instead we must establish mutual relations that are based entirely on justice.
There were other members of Congress who were on their last years, their last terms, and were commenting on how in their entire career they had never heard a speech of this type. And others had mentioned that Huzur had talked about protecting religious freedom, and to have a religious leader of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, which is sorely persecuted, come all the way to Capitol Hill and deliver a message that transcended politics, that was a distinctly spiritual message, was something that was also unique.
Witnessing the entire scene is the same national politician who hurried away in 2008.
In 2008, I think that the body language of this congressman was, he just thought he was meeting another political leader who wanted something from the United States. It was a very transactional relationship. In 2012, it was transformative. He was transformed. He was a different person. He understood the Jamaat more. He understood who Huzur was.
He made it a point to walk to Huzur, talk to him, express his, the feelings that he had, the good feelings that he had after listening to Huzur's speech, and stayed there for longer, had a long discussion with Huzur, and his attitude towards Huzur and the Jamaat had totally changed.
The agenda of Huzur is sublime. The agenda of Huzur is elevated. And when members of Congress who are ordinary political leaders see an extraordinarily spiritual person, they themselves are humbled. And this member of Congress was humbled in the course of this arc of 4 years between meeting Huzur in 2008 and listening to Huzur's address at Capitol Hill in 2012.
Huzur said that there was a fraction of a second when a thought crossed my mind that how am I going to speak to these people who I'm going to speak to today. But he said that it was just a fraction of a second, and it was immediately replaced by the comfort that was given by Allah Ta'ala. And he said that Allah Ta'ala instilled in my heart a revelation that had been vouchsafed to the promised Messiah والسلام, which says, Nusarta bir-rob, that you have been helped with grandeur, with dignity, with prestige.
ایسے لگتا تھا کہ کیپٹل ہلز ہمارا ہے, سینیٹرز اور باقی لوگ جو سامنے سے آتے تھے وہ سائٹ پہ ہو جاتے تھے. تو میں اس پہ ہنس رہا تھا, میں کہتا کہ اللہ میاں جو ہے نا فیوچر کی جو ہوتا ہے نا, فیوچر فاسٹ فارورڈ کر کے فیوچر کی جو ترقی ہے نا وہ دکھا رہی ہے کہ جب خلیفۃ المسیح آئندہ زمانوں میں جب جایا کریں گے اسٹیٹس میں تو اسی کی جگہ ہوگی وہ اصل میں نا, تو باقی جو لوگ ہیں وہ سائڈ پہ ہوا کریں گے.
احمد کا جو آج سالار ہے, تیر ہاتھوں میں اس کے نہ تلوار ہے, ساتھ فوجوں کی کوئی نہ یلغار ہے, ابن منصور کی ایک للکار.
The Ahmadiyya community is one that has suffered terrible persecution around the world. Instead of falling into closing in or closing off or turning inward, to hear his deep commitment to the world, not just to the Ahmadiyya community, but to seeing more peace and more love throughout the world is truly astonishing, is an inspiration to us all.
پہچان ملے اس کے ہر باسی کو, نور ایمان ملے, ہے یہ مقصد ہمارا فقط اے خدا, تیری نصرت سے ہم کو یہ اچھا ملے, تیری نصرت اگر.
Very interesting talk about the work that His Holiness does and the Ahmadi Muslim community in promoting peace and reconciliation, and I would like very much to confirm my support.
I was struck by the remarks he made about the importance of peace in the community and a very clear message for all of us as to the part that we should be playing.
دین احمد کا جو آج سالار ہے, تیر ہاتھوں میں اس کے نہ تلوار ہے, ساتھ فوجوں کی کوئی نہ یلغار ہے, ابن منصور کی ایک للکار ہے.
Whatever we can do is to preach. It's a slow process, but we hope one day, ultimately, we shall win the hearts of the people.
تیر ہاتھوں میں اس کے نہ تلوار ہے, ساتھ فوجوں کی کوئی نہ یلغار ہے.
How do I feel? Great responsibility. It's not an easy job to lead the people and show your examples, but I can see that God is with me.
ساتھ فوجوں کی کوئی نہ یلغار ہے, ابن منصور کی ایک للکار ہے, ایک للکار ہے.